Hey TV fans, Bored now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the second episode of the new BBC thriller series The Tourist, so episode 2. Full spoilers from the start of this review, and I enjoyed this one again, pretty much most of it. I think at times it was a little slow. Probably one of the problems is that there might be too many characters in this show, because in this one, for example, they introduce this specialist who's like coming from out of town, and once again there's a lot of like quirky sort of comedic type moments in this, because he's like getting this call in the middle of like teaching this class, and you know, at one point he goes on the toilet. We see a bit too much of that than we would like, but becomes sort of a subplot with him where he's called in to investigate this whole thing. And once again there's the sense that this small town is a little bit timid and a little bit shaken up when something like this happens. He says, you know, where the fuck is Bridgeport, sort of thing, or wherever the place is. So he goes in, and there's this whole almost like buddy cop mismatched pairing with him and this local like cop, because at one point when they're going out to investigate, like, he's nervous, like the other guy's nervous because there's a storm that's predicted. We don't go out in the storm, and at one point he says, well, it's getting dark now, we should turn back, and round here we don't stay out past dark because there's kangaroos and they go crazy, and the other guy's like, fuck the kangaroos. And then at one point he randomly throws up, so not as sort of professional or on top of things as he likes to make out, looking in like the tourist information, and it's just like this big barn and they're playing chess, and at one point the doorman character and Lucy go to them looking for help because they want to get to this place, and the place is where, of course, the guy is buried underground, the guy who called him on the phone at the end of the last episode. And character in this one, it's the least he can do, it's your fault that I'm here, and he gives him like a rough place and address. So the focus of the episode, when it really works, is the Lucy stuff with, well, helping out the doorman character, because she agrees to drive him, and obviously he's very suspicious. He's like, well, you barely know me, so why would you do this? And there's good chemistry between them, so I do enjoy the stuff with them, and there's a sense that there's a little bit of an attraction sort of forming. But we obviously know from the last episode that Lucy knows more than she's letting on, because we saw her with the phone and with the pictures of them together. So Kid, and this whole sort of like coffee bean story where the coffee bean is meant to be the one who takes a chance on somebody. So Jamie Dorman's, he's quite hammy in this episode because he says fuck a lot and is screaming at the top of his voice as he gets more frustrated. But I think the episode is at its best where it sort of focuses on them, and you get this slow burn where Helen is starting to like piece things together and starting to follow the trail. But as it is, she's on a day off and she gets wind of, well, we find out his name's Mr. Nixon, that like the big Texan guy with the hat, the guy who showed up at the hospital and was asking about the doorman character, and he's very sort of suspicious and weird, and that's what I mean about a Coen Brothers sort of feel at times, because he's, you know, he feels like a classic Coen Brothers character. Not that I'm saying he's as interesting as that sort of thing, but he certainly has that sort of feel. I like the actor actually, because what he does is he's able to be quite scary and intimidating without actually being like obviously like physically sort of threatening or having, he doesn't really raise his voice, it's just like a certain tone and a certain like mannerism which indicates then this guy is maybe not to be messed with. We see him at one point, like he brutally kills someone who knows him and someone who's like cottoned on to what he's doing, because it's revealed in this that he was the guy who ran the doorman character off the road. And it's quite a brutal scene, because at first they sort of make an agreement, but it's like a trick on Nixon's part, where he then just repeatedly slams this truck door on the guy, like just over and over again. You don't see like any blood or anything, but just the image of him doing it like several times, and the sound and the guy reacting, it's pretty brutal to experience. So that's a good scene. That has a bit of an edge, but we slowly get these breadcrumbs where Helen's like investigated it, and like the receptionist at the hospital phones her, and at first, because it's her day off and she's doing stuff with Nathan, who I'll say at this point, her husband Nathan is the biggest douchebag in the whole show, bar none. He's just like terrible to her all the time and sort of running her down, and everything's about him, and he's not understanding that she wants to try and follow this lead up, and because her whole thing is like, well, no one else gives a shit at the department, so I want to try and do something. And eventually, because he gets shitty at one point when he finds out that she lies about to him, about like claims she's going over to see a friend who's like having relationship problems, and he finds out she was lying, so he goes off and has a night out with the lads and all that, and then she decides, well, I'm gonna go off as well, I'm gonna investigate. And I mean, again, talk about a show that maybe has a bit of everything, because there's this sort of running thing with her and like the whole Bloody Mary game, the stuff you do in the mirror, like similar to the Candyman style game. So yeah, there's that stuff. Like she actually does it at one point, which is pretty funny. And there's another scene in this with the doorman character and Lucy where there's like turtles having sex in like the road sort of thing. So there's all sorts of stuff going on. Well, there's like the breadcrumbs, she starts talking to Nixon, and that's a good example in that scene of how threatening he is, and she's obviously just following up on things like, well, why would you randomly take an interest in this guy? And he says, well, I just wanted to make sure he was okay, and she asks one or two questions. And he sort of makes it clear to her, I mean, through hints really, that he could be a threat to her, because he's asking her if she's alone. The hope is that we won't see too much of douchebag Nathan from now on, because I think he kind of drags the drama down a bit, and I'm a bit sort of fed up with. One thing I don't like is the Helen stuff and her having weight issues and stuff, and bits of it have been okay, but I think it sort of dragged things down a little bit. So I think as soon as Helen gets on the case and gets involved properly, I should say, I think that's when things are really gonna get interesting. The focus of the show, I think, should be Helen firmly on the case, and because you've got this nice story with her where she's like this very wet behind the ears rookie cop, hasn't really had a case like this before, and then in her personal life, so I can see partly why we've got this personal story. I guess maybe I just wish it was something else than her having a weight problem, but see an arc developing with Helen where she's very low on confidence, she's very like inexperienced, but ultimately she's like the only one who gives a damn about this whole thing, and so she's gonna start following it up and be quite independent and go slightly beyond the rules, if you like, and ultimately I think she's going to be the one who like cracks it, rather than this supposed expert from out of town. The guy who phoned him and the guy he's trying to get to ends up being killed because there's a scorpion goes inside the pipe because he's in this underground thing, and he ends up getting killed by the scorpion. I enjoyed the storm effects, because that sort of like added sort of more tension and visually was good to look at. But yeah, he randomly gets killed by a scorpion, So when they get there, it searches him anyway, his phone. So when they get back to the thing, that he's gonna charge his phone. But where things click is they go back to this helicopter. They had to sign, a release form to be taken in the helicopter. The signature which Lucy signed, and it's the same handwriting as the note that he got left in his trouser. All of them was in his trouser pocket. So he twigs, "She must know me," and to explain, and "Yeah, I do know you," and she gives him his real name, which is Elliot Stirwell, something like that. So it was Elliot anyway, the first name, and she says, "Well, do you really want to know who you are? Because you won't like the answer." That's The Tourist, the second episode. If you've been watching it, then let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. And look out for more TV reviews. Another thing I'm doing at the moment, another current show, is Dexter New Blood. So we're nearing the end of that. Well, the first season of the new Dexter show anyway. So look out for that. More reviews of that coming up on the channel. But thanks for listening. Take care. And see you guys again soon. Goodbye.